Have you ever seen a trophy as small as this? I mean, you'd struggle to get an egg in this thing. It is tiny. Now, why am I showing you a weird, tiny trophy? So I was looking for obscure things to add to my lacrosse memorabilia collection. And I came across this, it's a solid silver trophy. Not that there's an awful lot of silver in this, this tiny little object. But if you look very closely, if you can see it on the video there, you might not be able to see it with all the reflections going on. But I'll read it for you. It says, Calder Girls' School, Lacrosse, 1915, and then it has the name J.M. Nansen. So I did a bit of research because we deal with, pretty much all the girls' schools that play lacrosse here in the UK. I thought, I've never heard of Calder Girls' School. So I did a little bit of digging. So here's the story. So having a look online, some of the early history of Calder Girls' School is a little bit hazy. So it would appear that the school was actually named Calder Girls' School in 1907. And it would appear that, early in Calder Girls' School history, they had lacrosse fields. Now, this was obviously presented to a player in 1915. And Calder Girls' School, it actually started life as another school. And it was a weekly boarding school for only 12 pupils. Can you imagine going to school with just, 11 other people? But Calder School grew over the years, and I think at the most it had just over 200 pupils. So it was never a huge school. And there's a reason that Calder Girls' School disappeared, and it's a really, really interesting story. And involves a piece of history here in the UK, which I was never aware of before coming across this tiny trophy. So the main story isn't really lacrosse related, but I found out something really interesting, something I didn't know, based on this tiny, tiny lacrosse trophy. So the Calder Girls' School was in Cumbria. Now, if you're not aware of where Cumbria is in the UK, it's quite a remote area of the UK, and it's quite a beautiful area. And in 1939, the school experienced a increase in pupils. Because of its location, obviously because of World War II, it was considered quite a safe area. So more people were sending their girls to Calder Girls' School. Now, the school experienced growth until kind of, I think, the mid-50s, or early 50s. I think it got up to about 220 pupils. And after that, the attendance at the girls' school tailed off because of something called the Windscale incident. Now, I have never heard before finding this tiny trophy anything about the Windscale incident. So I'm doing the research, and it mentions the Windscale incident, and I'm just going to kind of refer to some of the research we found here. So we'd obviously got up to, in the 50s, around about 220 pupils, and then it says here, then came the Windscale incident. This event, aggravated by the exaggeration of newspapers and radio, had a devastating effect on the school and its pupils. Some were withdrawn immediately, others at the end of term. Applications for places dropped dramatically, but the school managed to struggle on. A further blow came with the death of Miss Gardner in 1961. By 1967, the number had dropped to 100 pupils. It was at this time Miss Bellamy decided to close the school. So I'm thinking, God, what's the Windscale incident? It sounds terrible. And I thought there'd be like some huge controversy at the school, but no. It didn't directly involve the school as an incident there at school, but something in the surrounding areas. So I go on to Google, what's the Windscale incident? Well, it transpires the Windscale incident, or the Windscale fire, was the worst nuclear disaster in the UK's history. And then I read further, and it transpires that the Windscale fire was one of the worst nuclear disasters in the world. So apparently, nuclear disasters are rated on a scale to 1 to 7. This was a 5. It was a 5. This is some serious, serious stuff. And I'm reading this. I'm just like, what on earth? How have I never heard of the Windscale incident? It's a major nuclear disaster in the UK. You know, I'd never heard of it. And I've mentioned it to a few other people who've gone, never heard of the Windscale incident. A couple of people have. So I decided to look further into it. So can you imagine paying all this money to send your daughter to a very expensive private girls' school in a beautiful part of the country, and then there's basically a nuclear fire, just down the road from the school. That's why people were pulling their kids out of Calder School, and that's why Calder School actually ended up closing down. Now I'm just going to read a little bit further about this Windscale incident because it's bonkers. It's crazy. So it says, the fire burned for 3 days and released radioactive fallout which spread across the UK and the rest of Europe. The radioactive isotope iodine-131, which may lead to cancer of the thyroid, was particularly concerning at the time. No kidding! It has since come to light that small but significant amounts of the highly dangerous radioactive isotope polonium-210 were also released. I don't know what it is, but it sounds bloody dangerous. So it says here, it is estimated that the radiation leak may have caused 240 additional cancer cases, with 100 to 240 of these being fatal. At the time of the incident, no one was evacuated from the surrounding area. But milk from about 500 square kilometres of nearby countryside was diluted and destroyed for about a month due to concerns about exposure to radiation. The UK government played down the events, surprise, surprise, and it still goes on to this day. And reports of the fire was subject to heavy censorship as Prime Minister Harold Macmillan feared the incident would harm British-American nuclear relations. Well, you know, cover up, you know, nothing changes, does it? Nothing changes. And it says here, the event was not an isolated incident. There'd been a series of radioactive discharge from the piles in the years leading up to the incident. I mean, the more you read about this, it's just horrendous. It is horrendous. So it's just bonkers. How I'd never heard of this nuclear incident in the UK. Just bizarre. But check it out. Windscale incident. So, you know, Windscale fire. Have a look. There's a whole lot of information on the internet about it. And when you read it, it's pretty horrifying. The chap in charge of the plant, if you go deeper into the articles here, it could have been an awful lot worse if it wasn't for some of the stuff he'd done. And it's just crazy. So all of this starts from this dinky, let's reach for it, this dinky little trophy here. It's amazing what you find on the internet. So, you know, you find the world's smallest lacrosse trophy, and then, you know, you learn something about an incident you have never heard about. So I thought I'd share this with you guys because I just thought this was, you know, a really interesting object, and it transpires that it has a very, very bizarre backstory alongside it. So the Calder Girls' School, there is still an old girls network apparently. So if you went to Calder Girls' School, if you know who J.M. Nanson was, so that's spelled Nanson, then reach out to us. Maybe they have a relative that would like this tiny trophy back. Amazing.